We come now to the last form of inductive inference we'll be exploring, namely analogy. In an analogy, we are arguing on the basis of likeness or similarity. It's really a comparison, in the sense that we are finding similarities rather than differences. When we compare, we find likenesses. When we contrast, we find differences. Reasoning by analogy always involves likenesses. Take this example. Premise 1, Nicole's vehicle, a 2007 Ford SUV, is expensive to run. Premise 2, Laverne's vehicle is a 2007 Ford SUV and is expensive to run. Premise 3, Jessica's vehicle is a 2007 Ford SUV. Conclusion, so Jessica's vehicle is expensive to run. As you can see, we're finding similarities in the first two cases. These are vehicles that are of the same type, they're Ford SUVs of the same year, 2007, and they are expensive to run. Since the third case, Jessica's automobile shares the relevant features, that is to say, it's a 2007 Ford SUV, we can conclude, by analogy, that it too is expensive to run. Here's the form of the argument. Premise 1, N is A, B, C, and D. Premise 2, L is A, B, C, and D. Premise 3, J is A, B, and C. Conclusion, so J is D. Let's examine the factors we should look for when constructing good analogical arguments. First, identify as many analogous features, likenesses, or similarities as possible. Second, be aware of the dissimilarities. If these predominate, then the analogy will fail. Third, make sure that the likenesses are relevant to your conclusion. If I try to argue that a car can fly because it shares certain features with a jet fighter, like an engine, seats, and a windshield, my argument won't get very far because the likenesses aren't relevant to my hypothesis. Finally, don't try to push an analogy too far. Stick to obvious likenesses and similar cases. Here's a famous argument that uses analogy. It's an argument that has enjoyed some notoriety of late because it's been dusted off by proponents of intelligent design, but it's really been around for at least 200 years. The version you see here was formulated by William Paley, an English clergyman from the early 1800s. I'll paraphrase it. In crossing a field, suppose I tripped on a stone and asked how the stone got there. I might answer that for all I knew, it had been there forever. But suppose I found a watch on the ground and asked how the watch got there. I wouldn't give the answer I gave before, that for all I knew, the watch had been there forever. In order for the watch to have been there, someone must have made the watch, that is, a watchmaker. He made the watch for a certain purpose, understood its construction, and designed its use. And so it is with our world. Every indication of design which existed in the watch exists in the works of nature, with the difference on the side of nature of being greater or more, and that in a degree which exceeds all computation. What is the argument here? It's the so-called watchmaker analogy. Basically, it goes like this. A watch is to a watchmaker as the universe is to a universe maker, that is to say, an intelligent designer who can only be God. The analogy has this form. Watch is to watchmaker as universe is to God. In English, the argument would sound like this. Since a watch, which has an intricate mechanical design that produces an intelligent outcome, requires a watchmaker, so the universe, which has an intricate mechanical design that produces an intelligent outcome, requires a universe maker who can only be God. Is this a good analogical argument? Where does it break down? Let's think about this. Once out of the watchmaker's shop, the watch is on its own, so to speak. The watchmaker isn't hovering over it after it's sold. Now, is this true of the universe? Or take a more disturbing theological possibility. Watchmakers grow old and die. Is this also true of God? If the analogy is a good one, it's a consequence we have to reckon with. This concludes this segment of a multi-part lecture on induction. Please proceed to the next segment.